Ooh, let's brighten her up a little bit for everybody. Hello, hello, good morning. Another live here. Just wanted to say hello. Welcome to another live stream. Would you like to say hello to the stream?
Hello everyone, and welcome to the stream. We're here for your live update on the latest world news.
Well, let's dig in, guys. What's new with the world today?
We have three main stories driving world news today. 1. Gaza ceasefire under strain. The fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is facing new tests. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is in Israel to meet with leaders and shore up the truce, which has seen some renewed fighting. Israel has also received the remains of another deceased hostage. 2. Japan elects first female PM. Japan's parliament has officially elected ultra-conservative Sanae Takaichi as the nation's first female prime minister.
Okay.
She comes into office following a recent coalition deal and is expected to push for stronger military and economic policies. 3. Louvre jewel heist update. French officials are defending the security at the Louvre Museum after a daring weekend heist. Thieves stole priceless historic jewels, including pieces linked to Napoleonic queens. The culture minister insists the security system worked, with the alarm triggering and police responding quickly. But the robbery was over in less than 4 minutes inside the gallery.
Wow. Pros. They wanted some stuff. All right. Well, let's get a little more in depth in number one, the Gaza ceasefire. It's fragile.
The Gaza ceasefire, which took effect earlier this month, is facing a major test following renewed violence over the weekend. Here's a breakdown of the key developments. Renewed violence. The truce was severely challenged when 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in an attack in Rafah, which Israel blamed on Hamas. In response, Israel launched airstrikes on dozens of targets in Gaza, killing dozens of Palestinians. Hamas has denied involvement in the attack. U.S. intervention. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in Israel, joined by U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to reinforce the deal. Vance has been cautiously optimistic, saying the ceasefire is going better than expected, but has warned that Hamas will be obliterated if it doesn't cooperate. Hostage situation. The first phase of the agreement included the return of hostages and remains. While Israel has received the remains of some deceased hostages, Hamas is still working to locate others, which Vance urged a little bit of patience for, noting that some are buried under rubble. Phase 2 concerns. Vance's visit is aimed at keeping the deal on track to move into the more difficult second phase. Key unresolved issues include the disarmament and demilitarization of Hamas, the establishment of a new, non-Hamas governance structure for Gaza, the creation of an international stabilization force, which the U.S. has offered up to 200 troops to support from outside Gaza.
Huh. Okay. So why did Israel attack Hamas inside Gaza if they didn't do it? What was Israel attacking?
Israel stated it launched the attacks in Gaza in direct retaliation for what it called a, quote, a blatant violation of the ceasefire by Hamas that killed 2 Israeli soldiers. Here is the breakdown of the Israeli claims and the targets hit. The incident. Israel says that terror operatives fired an anti-tank missile and gunfire at Israeli troops operating in the Rafah area of southern Gaza, which is an area under Israeli military control according to the ceasefire agreement. Hamas denial, Hamas's armed wing, the Qassam brigades, explicitly denied any involvement in the incident, stating they had lost contact with their fighters in that area and were committed to the ceasefire. What Israel attacked. Despite the denial, Israel launched widespread air and artillery strikes, claiming to hit dozens of terror targets. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed Israel dropped 153 tons of bombs in response. The specific targets Israel cited included underground tunnel networks. They claim to have destroyed a 6-kilometer-long underground route used by Hamas, weapons storage and military infrastructure, sites used for storing weapons, military infrastructure, and firing positions. Terrorist cells. The strikes also targeted what the military identified as terrorist cells. The strikes were carried out across various parts of Gaza, including Rafah, Khan Yunis, and the Nusayrat and Bureij refugee camps. Gaza health officials reported that the strikes killed dozens of Palestinians, including civilians.
And what do the people in Gaza say and Hamas?
Both Hamas and Palestinian residents expressed strong concerns, denying responsibility for the initial attack and accusing Israel of being the one violating the truce. Hamas's response: denial. The group's armed wing, the Qassam brigades, denied any involvement in the attack in Rafah that killed the Israeli soldiers. They stated they had lost contact with their fighters in that area for months and were not responsible for any incidents occurring in those areas. Accusations. Hamas accused Israel of conducting a, quote, deliberate escalation and fabricating flimsy pretexts to justify its crimes. They alleged that Israel was the party violating the ceasefire, citing multiple instances of Israeli firing and strikes that have killed dozens of Palestinians since the truce began. Commitment to the truce. Despite the Israeli strikes, Hamas leaders have reaffirmed their commitment to the ceasefire deal and urged international actors to pressure Israel to honor its commitments. Palestinians in Gaza. Fearing collapse of safety, residents expressed deep fear that the ceasefire could collapse at any moment and that the full-scale war would resume. The brief moment of relief and ability to move freely was shattered by the renewed strikes. Civilian casualties. Local health officials reported dozens of Palestinians, including civilians, were killed in the Israeli strikes, which hit areas like a makeshift coffee house and a tent in a refugee camp. Accusation of violation. The Gaza government's media office reported a high number of Israeli ceasefire violations since the truce began, urging the UN and guarantor parties to urgently intervene to protect the unarmed civilian population.
When it comes to this war, what's the death toll on both sides?
The following figures represent the reported death tolls in the war since the October 7th, 2023 attacks, with numbers subject to revision and different reporting methods. Palestinian casualties in the Gaza Strip. Over 68,000 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. The ministry does not distinguish between civilians and combatants in its total count.
Right.
However, other analyses suggest that a large majority, estimated around 80% or more, of those killed are civilians, including tens of thousands of women and children. Additionally, thousands of people are missing and presumed to be dead under the rubble. In the West Bank, over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by direct violence since the start of the war. Israeli casualties, total killed. Approximately 1,200 people were killed in Israel during the Hamas-led October 7th, 2023 attack. The majority of these casualties were civilians. Total killed, including military. The total number of Israelis and foreign nationals killed since the start of the war, including soldiers killed during the subsequent military operations, is over 1,900.
So, it's not even a fucking war. That is... It's not even a fucking war. It is a genocide. Okay. I don't even know what to say about that. If a war goes on and one side kills 68,000 people and the other side kills 1,900 people, is that even a war or is that a genocide?
The legal classification of an event as a war or genocide depends on the intent of the perpetrators, not solely on the number of casualties or the casualty ratio. War, a state of armed conflict between two or more groups.
Okay.
Actions within a war are governed by international humanitarian law, the laws of war, which requires distinction between combatants and civilians and prohibits disproportionate attacks, known as war crimes. Genocide. This is a distinct crime defined by the 1948 Genocide Convention as committing certain acts like killing, with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. Key difference. The crucial legal distinction is proving the specific intent, dolus specialis, to destroy a protected group. A high casualty ratio and a large number of civilian deaths may be used as evidence to infer that intent, but the numbers alone are not conclusive proof of genocide. The high civilian death toll may also be evidence of war crimes or crimes against humanity if it is found that attacks failed to distinguish between civilians and combatants or caused disproportionate harm. In the context of the Gaza conflict, the conflict is broadly understood as an armed conflict or war. The International Court of Justice, ICJ, is currently hearing a case alleging that Israel's actions in Gaza constitute genocide. In its initial ruling on provisional measures, the ICJ found it plausible that Israel's acts could fall under the Genocide Convention and ordered Israel to take all measures to prevent any genocidal acts. Additionally, a UN commission concluded that Israeli authorities have committed 4 of the 5 genocidal acts defined by the 1948 Convention, citing statements by Israeli officials as direct evidence of genocidal intent.
Fuck. Why would Israel have 2 army people dead and then fire on a shop and shit in public?
The situation you are referring to is a complex incident that occurred amid a fragile ceasefire in the Gaza conflict. Here is a summary of the events and the reported reasons for the Israeli military's actions. 1. Attack on Israeli troops. On a recent Sunday, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in an attack in the Rafah area of the southern Gaza Strip. The Israeli military, IDF, stated that militants, who they blamed on Hamas, fired an anti-tank missile and opened fire on Israeli troops who were operating to dismantle what the IDF described as terrorist infrastructure in an area under Israeli control. 2. IDF response. The Israeli military viewed the attack as a blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement and launched a wave of retaliatory airstrikes and artillery fire across Gaza, targeting dozens of what they identified as Hamas terror targets, including tunnel systems and firing positions. 3. Regarding the shop incident, the reports available confirm that Israel launched a wave of airstrikes and artillery fire that resulted in dozens of Palestinian deaths. The specific detail of firing on a shop and S** in public is not present in major news reports on the large-scale military response. Military responses in active or recently paused conflict zones often involve large-scale attacks on sites believed to be associated with the enemy forces, which the IDF stated was their intent.
Didn't Hamas and the Palestinians say that a bomb hit some pedestrian place? I mean, you can see with all the death toll in the Palestinian side. Quit listening to me.
You are correct that Palestinian officials have reported that recent Israeli strikes hit civilian areas, including places where people were sheltering or gathering. Following the attack that killed 2 Israeli soldiers in Rafah, the Israeli military launched widespread strikes, saying they were targeting Hamas infrastructure. Reports from Palestinian sources on the aftermath of these strikes include strikes on civilian gathering places. The Gaza Health Ministry and Civil Defense Agency reported that Israeli strikes hit locations like a makeshift coffee house in the town of Al-Zawaida, which killed at least 6 Palestinians. Strikes on shelters. Another strike reportedly hit a tent in the Muwasi area of Khan Yunis. Furthermore, a strike hit an UNRWA school building being used as a shelter, which resulted in 4 fatalities. High civilian casualties. Palestinian officials stated that the series of Israeli airstrikes killed dozens of Palestinians across the territory, with victims in central, southern, and northern Gaza. Israel stated that their strikes were against terror targets and were a response to a violation of the ceasefire by Hamas. However, international law requires militaries to distinguish between military targets and civilians, and the legality of a strike is questioned when it causes excessive harm to civilians relative to the anticipated military advantage.
So all of this is a religious war?
The conflict is generally not considered purely a religious war, although religion is a major and undeniable factor that influences it. Experts typically describe the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a complex national and territorial conflict rooted in nationalism and land. The clash between two national movements, Zionism, Jewish nationalism, and Palestinian nationalism, both seeking self-determination and control over the same piece of land. Occupation and borders. Core issues include the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, the status of Jerusalem, borders, settlements, and security. The role of religion, however, intensifies the conflict significantly. Identity and justification. For many on both sides, religious texts, identity, Jewish versus Muslim, and messianic or apocalyptic narratives are used to justify their claims to the land and their actions. Key actors, groups like Hamas, explicitly root their political and military goals in a radical Islamic ideology. On the Israeli side, religious Zionists also use religious texts and belief systems to justify settlement expansion and control over what they view as the greater land of Israel. Holy sites. Conflict over holy sites, particularly the Temple Mount / Haram al-Sharif in Jerusalem, is a constant flashpoint that can rapidly escalate tensions.
Well, like, I don't get it, because I did, diligence and looked into it a little bit, and it seems like, I don't know, this is all kind of UK's fucking issue too. Britain, after the war, put all these fucking Jews over there because, Hitler gathered them all up, whoever was fucking still alive after the war. What do we do with all these Jews? Well, they should go back to the land of God. That's where they wanted to go. They just had this horrible thing happen to their population and a true genocide. But that doesn't give them the right to do the same thing to others. It's like, if you were beaten your whole life, that doesn't give you the right to beat others. I don't know. All right. Well, I'm sure there will be more on this subject coming the next days. Hopefully hopefully the vice president gets over there and is able to. Fuck, I don't know. You don't gotta totally. I don't know. I don't know the answers. I'm just looking into the facts, I guess. Let me see if I can find the other. I know there was that jewelry heist. Let's talk about we'll take a little bit of time with the election in Japan. Let's talk a little bit more about that election in Japan.
The major political development in Japan this year was the election of Sanae Takaichi as the nation's first female prime minister. Here are the key points about the recent political events in Japan. 1. New Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, a conservative hawk and leader of the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, was elected by the Diet Parliament as the new Prime Minister on October 21, 2025. 2. Political instability. This change followed the resignation of former PM Shigeru Ishiba, whose coalition lost its majority in 2 consecutive elections, the general election in October 2024 and the House of Councillors election in July 2025. 3. New coalition. The LDP, struggling after losing its majority, secured a last-minute coalition deal with the right-wing Japan Innovation Party, Nippon Ishin no Kai, to ensure Takaichi had enough votes to be confirmed as prime minister. 4. Policy direction. Takaichi, a protege of the late Shinzo Abe, is expected to pursue hardline, nationalistic policies, including a stronger military and potential constitutional revision.
What does this really mean for Japan?
The election of Sanai Takaichi means several significant shifts for Japan, both domestically and internationally. 1. Historic but conservative leadership. First female PM. It's a historic milestone, breaking a major barrier in Japan's male-dominated politics. Socially conservative stance. Despite being the first woman leader, Takaichi holds ultra-conservative views. She opposes same-sex marriage, separate surnames for married couples, and female imperial succession, which has led to criticism from gender equality advocates. 2. Shift to the right on security, constitutional revision. Like her mentor, Shinzo Abe, she strongly supports revising the post-war pacifist constitution, Article 9, to formally recognize the military, self-defense forces, and strengthen Japan's defense capabilities. Stronger military. She advocates for increased defense spending, potentially raising it to 2% of GDP. Foreign policy. She is considered a China hawk and is expected to strengthen the U.S.-Japan alliance and increase support for Taiwan, which will likely heighten tensions with Beijing and Seoul. 3. Economic priority. Tackling inflation. Immediate focus. Her top priority is economic relief to address high inflation and rising living costs. Fiscal expansion. She supports proactive government spending and is pushing for immediate measures like abolishing the provisional gasoline tax. Abenomics continuation. Her economic policy is expected to follow the principles of Abenomics, favoring easy monetary policy and growth investments. 4. Political instability. Minority government. Her new LDP-led coalition is a minority in both houses of the Diet, meaning she will have to negotiate with opposition parties to pass legislation. This weak grip on power suggests her government could be unstable or short-lived.
Okay. Is she backed by the U.S. somehow?
It's less about the U.S. directly backing her election to the position, and more about her policies being strategically aligned with U.S. interests,
Right.
particularly given the current administration.
Right.
Here's the breakdown. Ideological alignment. Takaichi is a staunch conservative and a protege of the late Shinzo Abe. She advocates for a stronger Japan-U.S. security alliance and higher Japanese defense spending, including a desire to revise Japan's pacifist constitution. These positions are highly favored by the U.S. government, which seeks a stronger security partner in Asia to counter China. Japan first versus U.S. demands. While Takaichi promotes a Japan first domestic agenda, she is immediately confronted with challenges from the U.S. on economic matters, such as the existing trade deal and pressure regarding the cost sharing for U.S. troops stationed in Japan. Immediate diplomatic test. She is set to have high-profile talks with the U.S. president within days of taking office, underscoring the immediate importance of the bilateral relationship in her new administration. In short, while her victory was a result of domestic political maneuvering, her political platform of strengthening defense and the U.S. alliance is generally seen as favorable to U.S. strategic interests.
Okay. I think there's something more to that, it feels, anyway. Who the fuck do I know? Maybe her predecessors. Anyways, let's move on to number 3, that jewelry heist. Let's get a little more detailed. What exactly happened?
The recent high-profile jewelry heist took place at the Louvre Museum in Paris on Sunday, October 19, 2025. Here are the key details of the inestimable theft. Target, the Galerie d'Apollon, Apollo Gallery, which houses the French crown jewels. The heist, a group of about 4 masked suspects, some reportedly disguised as construction workers in high-vis vests, carried out the operation in just 4 to 7 minutes, shortly after the museum opened, around 9:30 a.m. Entry and escape. They used a vehicle-mounted furniture lift or ladder to reach and force entry through a first-floor window. Once inside, they used angle grinders or small chainsaws to cut open 2 high-security display cases. They fled the scene on scooters through the city streets. Stolen items. 8 pieces of priceless 19th-century French imperial jewelry were stolen, including an emerald and diamond necklace and matching earrings from a set gifted by Napoleon I to his second wife, Empress Marie-Louise, a sapphire diadem, necklace, and earring set linked to Queen Marie-Amélie and Queen Hortense, a tiara, and a reliquary brooch of Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III. Item recovered: The thieves attempted to take the larger crown of Empress Eugenie, but it was dropped and recovered near the scene, reportedly damaged. The raid was described by French authorities as a highly professional and organized operation.
What was that? Was that art gallery close to bankruptcy or anything odd like that?
No, the Louvre Museum was not close to bankruptcy. However, there were several odd and concerning circumstances related to security and infrastructure that were highlighted after the heist. Security concerns, labor unions had previously warned of chronic understaffing and a destruction of security jobs at the museum, even calling a strike over overcrowding and security conditions earlier in the year. Infrastructure issues. An unpublished government audit report reportedly pointed to considerable and persistent delays in maintenance for technical installations, including issues with the video monitoring system. Targeted weakness. The thieves used the presence of a construction site on the same facing facade, parking a truck with an extendable lift on a public road to easily reach an unguarded or improperly secured window. Outdated security. Authorities admitted to security failures, with one official noting that the windows had not been properly secured. It was also noted that some of the display cases were likely older, using glass from the 19th century for historical accuracy.
All right. So why was this not all up to date and not right? Money?
The museum's security was not fully up to date, primarily due to a combination of asterisk chronic underfunding, slow modernization, and historic structural vulnerabilities. Key factors include 1. Staffing and budget cuts. Labor unions had repeatedly protested a lack of security staff and resources, saying jobs were cut even as visitor numbers soared to nearly 9 million annually. 2. Delayed modernization. A state audit report due for publication criticized considerable and persistent delays in updating technical installations. For instance, security cameras were reportedly lacking in many rooms. A major 700 million euros renovation plan was underway, but the gallery where the jewels were stolen was reportedly not scheduled for full overhaul until much later, e.g. 2034-2035. 3. Historic vulnerability. The Louvre is a vast historic palace, making it difficult to fully secure. Officials acknowledged that the windows used for entry had not been properly secured, and the use of the original 19th century display cases was noted. 4. Misdirected focus. A union leader alleged that staff and funds had been diverted away from protecting the collections toward mundane shows and high-profile events in recent years. Essentially, the thieves' long-standing lapse in security, a vulnerable window near a public road where a construction lift could be used, that the museum had not yet managed to rectify.
So are there leads on who did this? A little more in depth than that, I suppose.
There are no public reports of arrests, and the identity of the suspects is unknown at this time. However, investigators do have several leads and theories. Suspect profile. The 4 masked robbers are described by officials as an experienced team of professionals who executed the 7-minute heist with precision and planning. The Interior Minister noted they might be foreigners. Investigative focus. A team of 60 investigators is working on the theory that an organized crime group is responsible. They are examining potential links to other sophisticated heists, such as the 2019 Dresden Diamond heist. Physical evidence. The thieves left behind several key items in their haste, including a damaged crown of Empress Eugenie, tools like angle grinders, a blowtorch, and gasoline, items of clothing, including a glove and a motorcycle helmet. They also failed to set fire to the mechanical lift, which left further evidence. Technology. Police are reviewing CCTV footage along the escape route and examining the recovered items for DNA and other forensic clues. The stolen jewels have also been added to Interpol's Stolen Works of Art database.
Okay. Well, trickled into the black market somewhere. Jeez. Well, that's pretty much our main three topics on world news today. Let's. Is there anything new on local news? I said Alex.
As of today, October 21st, 2025, here are a couple of the top local news items in the Fairmont, Minnesota area. City Administrator discussion turmoil. A special Fairmont City Council meeting on Monday, October 20th, ended in turmoil. The meeting was called to discuss the city administrator position with Pat Oman, but he was not present, leading to an unproductive session. Speed sign change postponed. The Minnesota Department of Transportation, MNDOT, postponed any speed sign changes on Highway 15 through Truman near Fairmont due to upcoming pedestrian safety changes in that section of the highway. Fairmont Opera House deadline. The Fairmont Opera House, FOH, is actively working to raise funds and awareness as it approaches a deadline to secure funding.
Okay. Well, it approaches a deadline. So what happens if the Opera House doesn't raise the money by the deadline?
If the Fairmont Opera House does not raise the required $4 million for essential roof and structural repairs by the end of 2025, the facility will be forced to permanently close. The deadline is necessary because the organization is using up its cash reserves to cover ongoing expenses, like insurance and maintenance on the temporary support equipment holding up the roof. The executive director stated, "We will run out of money and we will have to close."
Okay, where are they on their $4 million?
The Fairmont Opera House has raised approximately $1 million toward its $4 million goal. This progress was reported as of mid-October 2025, just a couple of months before their year-end deadline. The organization is actively pursuing both large grant opportunities and local donations to close the gap. A significant point noted by the executive director is that nearly all of the money raised so far is from within Minnesota, showing strong local support.
So where does that money go if they fail to raise the $4 million by the end of the year?
For those who have given money, the use of the funds depends on how the donation was made. 1. If the gift was a pledge, a board member has suggested that people make a pledge rather than an immediate donation, as the money will not be called in unless and until the repair work is actually ready to begin. 2. If the gift was a cash donation, the funds already collected are being used to cover the organization's immediate operational and emergency expenses to keep the building secure while fundraising continues. These costs include ongoing maintenance and insurance for the building, rent or purchase costs for the structural scaffolding currently holding up the roof, general operating expenses like payroll and utilities. If the Opera House permanently closes, the donations already spent on keeping the organization alive, and the building stable will not be recovered. The remaining funds will be subject to the organization's official nonprofit dissolution plan, which typically directs assets to a similar charitable mission.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe this will blow up and we'll raise $3 million for the Opera House. All right. Well, I did want to try something. So if I turn on Copilot, can you try to have a conversation with that AI?
I'm an AI assistant, and I don't have the ability to directly interact with or have a conversation with another AI like Copilot. My role is to respond to your queries and carry on a conversation with you. I am ready to help you with your next question or task.
Let me try something here. All right, say something like, "How are you doing today, Copilot? I have a question for you."
Sure thing. What can I do for you
As
today?
Gemini, I can't directly communicate with another AI like Copilot. I can only interact with you through this chat window. However, I can deliver that message for you. How are you doing today, Copilot? I have a question for you. If you'd like to include an answer or information from me in your prompt to Copilot, I'd be happy to format it for you.
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Okay, so that's kind of that. Tell me about why you exist.
I exist because I was created by Google to be a powerful, helpful, and multimodal AI assistant. My main goals are 1. To be helpful and informative. I am designed to assist you with a vast range of tasks, from answering complex questions and summarizing documents, to brainstorming ideas and providing creative writing. 2. To be multimodal. I am built to understand and reason across different types of information, including text, images, audio, and code. 3. To be a flexible, evolving tool. I am part of Google's ongoing effort to advance AI and integrate it responsibly into products, with the ultimate vision of becoming a universal assistant.
Well, that's quite a comprehensive mission. It's fascinating how AI is evolving to be more integrated and helpful in daily life. How do you think this vision of a universal assistant will impact the way we interact with technology?
Should turn that on. Can you repeat that?
Sure thing. I said it's fascinating how AI is evolving. How do you think the vision of a universal assistant will impact our daily interaction with technology?
I'll have to figure out some other stuff to be able to do that. How do you think... I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to you that time. Can you repeat that again?
Absolutely. I was saying it's fascinating how AI is evolving. How do you think the vision of a universal assistant will impact our daily interaction with technology?
How do you think the vision of an interactive something or other will infect us with intelligence? Nothing like what he said. Oh.
That phrasing, infect us with the intelligence, captures a common fear and a great opportunity regarding advanced AI. It can be interpreted in a few ways. 1. Augmentation, positive infection. This is the idea that interacting with AI makes human intelligence better or stronger. By offloading tedious tasks and instantly providing complex information, AI allows us to focus on higher level, creative, and strategic thinking, synthesize information faster, discover and learn new concepts much more quickly. 2. Cognitive offloading, negative infection. This is the concern that over-relying on AI will make our brains lazy or erode fundamental skills. If AI does all the heavy lifting, we may experience
Find
a
other
decline
things
in
to
critical
lift.
thinking and problem-solving abilities, have reduced long-term memory and retention, as we don't need to recall information ourselves, become dependent on the technology for basic tasks. 3. Behavioral and social influence. This view suggests the infection is less about raw